It is July, and in July I have concentrated on my recently acquired books. I am redoing my library, making my dream library, I am organizing my TBR shelf, which is getting out of control, and I am catching up on all my recently acquired books videos. I've been making the videos every month, but I have been struggling to put them up each month. In July, I also want to go over my recently acquired books spreadsheet that I've been working on, let you know how many books I've acquired from the beginning of the year to July, how many books I have read out of the books that I've acquired, how I'm keeping track of that, my spreadsheet, all that good stuff. One of the things that I wanted to do this month was the book acquiring tag. So I cannot remember, I didn't write down who created this tag, but I will link their channel down below. I've seen a ton of people do this tag. I've seen Rosie misreads a lot, Dane Cobain, Fred do this tag. Oh, I saw AJ Dunn do this tag. And a lot of people have been doing this tag and it's been going around for a while, but I thought July would be the perfect time for me to do this tag. To preface all of the questions and this tag in general, I don't buy new books, or I very, very rarely buy new books. If you want to see a video all about why I don't buy new books, I will link that in the description box below. Prompt number 1 is, do you plan your book buying or do you impulse buy? So basically every question has something to do with buying books, or many of the questions have something to do with buying books. Because I don't buy new books, I'm just going to say acquire. I'm just going to use buy as acquire. So I don't plan on my book acquiring. I don't plan it out. Even if I do end up buying used books, I don't know what I'm going to buy ahead of time. I don't seek out books specifically to buy or to acquire. I do have a want to read list on my Goodreads, and those are any books that spark my interest that I want to keep my eye out for. Some of those are more pressing for me to get to, and those are the ones that if I do buy used books online, or if I do buy used books in a used bookstore, I might like specifically look for, but it's very rare. It's not really a plan that I actually find those books. Occasionally, I will buy used books online, but really those are kind of impulse buys too, because I'm not like, oh, I want to read this book this month and then I go out and buy it. I just think of a book that I want and then I buy that book. Question number 2 is, how do you decide what books to buy? So again, I don't decide what books to buy. I just go to a bookstore and the books that are there, and I want them, and then I buy them. Since I only buy used books, it's very by chance. As far as acquiring books, it's basically the same thing. I don't decide what I'm going to acquire. I just go out to little free libraries or to stoop sales or to library sales, and I see books that I want and I buy them. Question number 3 is, what is your philosophy about where you shop? Big bookstores, used bookstores, and also what kinds of books you shop for, digital or audio or physical books. Again, I will link the video down below where I talk all about why I don't buy new books, but my philosophy on buying books and buying everything is that you should buy secondhand as much as possible. I've only bought one new book all year this year, and it was a pre-order, and that was because it was an indie book and it was going to be very hard to eventually find, and also I wanted to support that debut author. In my opinion, you should always buy secondhand first. That's the most sustainable and earth-friendly way to buy anything. I understand that we want to support authors and we want to support bookstores, so used bookstores are a great resource. I think also that indie bookstores, if you can't shop secondhand or if you specifically need to buy a book for some reason, that indie bookstores are the next best way to go. I try not to buy off of big bookshops like Waterstones or Barnes & Nobles or direct from Amazon, things like that. But I do think that it's important to support authors, and I have really come around to the idea of buying and pre-ordering books, because pre-ordering does make a big difference to indie authors. So I think if you can pre-order a book through an indie bookstore, then that is a next level good thing to do. And then as far as audio versus physical versus digital, I don't read any books online. I might read like a short story or something from a website, but I never read books on a Kindle or on my phone. I prefer a physical book when I'm reading with my eyeballs, but I do love audiobooks. As far as audiobooks go, I get most of my audiobooks from free sites that are technically not paying for the books that they have got. So they are getting books from Audible and places like that. I have purchased books on Audible actually. Not recently. There have been rare moments where I've purchased books. I probably purchased a total of like 10 books on Audible, and I do have a internet subscription that gives me free short story collections, so I have been trying to read those. I am trying to get rid of that internet subscription. I keep trying to, and then things keep popping up on there that I do want to see or that I want to read. So it is hard to get rid of that subscription, but I'm trying. Audiobooks, generally, I get them for free from sites. Sometimes I get them free from other places. I also will pick up books on CDs at book sales and stuff, but currently the only place that I can listen to those is in my car because our car is kind of old and we still have a CD player there. So I don't really get to listen to very many of the ones that I pick up, but when I see one that I like, I will like grab it. Sometimes I'll get them from my dad too because he does buy a lot of books on CDs. Question number 4, what do you think of little free libraries? Well, I think little free libraries are wonderful. I love little free libraries and I use them all the time. And I would say the vast majority of books that I acquire from little free libraries. I've known about little free libraries for quite a while. I actually have a little library that encompasses little library tag. It's the only original tag I've done so far. So if you also love little free libraries, I would suggest checking out that tag. I think little free libraries are such a great resource, and I think by using them, by taking books and by leaving books, we're perpetuating the idea that not everything has to be purchased, that not everything has to be individualized, that not everything has to be consumer-based, that you can really trade and give freely. I think that's a great thing. I would love to see more of that. I actually recently saw a video, I haven't watched the video yet, but it's on my list, of a seed library, which I think is a super great idea. It is a little free library, but instead of books, it has seeds. When you have your seed sorting at the end of the summer or the end of your growing period, you can put seeds in that library, and then people can also drop off seeds to that library. I think that's such a great idea. I should put a playlist down below of all the little free library videos I do, and mostly during my recently acquired books videos, I'll add a couple of little free libraries in there as well. I have a sort of loose goal / challenge to myself to go to every little free library I can in Monmouth County. I've already been to a large amount of them on the Little Free Library app, which I will also link below, and on the website, which I will also link below. But you always see little free libraries that aren't on the map. So I'm constantly finding new little free libraries. And I think maybe a bigger part of this challenge, and something that I would like to expand to, and this might be a goal for 2023, is to make my own map of a little free libraries and maybe my own resource of all the libraries that aren't on the Little Free Library official map. Question number 5. How do you feel after acquiring a book? Do you share? Do you do a book haul? Or do you do some kind of post on it? So I also have a video of why I don't love book hauls, and book hauls are probably one of the things that I watch the least on BookTube. But I feel great after acquiring a book. I definitely have acquired so many books, and especially since I've been keeping track of acquiring my books, I feel this feeling more where I feel a little bit anxious that I'm definitely not going to be able to read all the books that I've acquired anytime soon, and I keep seeing them amass, and that amassing of books is a little bit distressing. One of the things that I'm doing to combat that is just trying to DNF if I don't love a book, or putting books in my basement books where I have way more books even and could be considered a sort of TBR, so that I can come back to those books later. That makes looking at my TBR shelf not quite as overwhelming as it could be. Other than that, I feel quite good about acquiring books. Now, as far as book hauls are not my favorite thing. It is my least watched thing. There are few people who do book hauls who I will watch their book hauls, but mostly it's because they haul books that I've never heard of before. Seeing their hauled books is like learning about new books, which I guess all book hauls could be, but I find that the majority of book hauls just don't interest me. Since starting my channel, I have made quite a few recently acquired book videos. They're more for me, and so that I can see like when I got certain books and what books I got and what books I read off of those. So starting in 2022 is when I really started actually making monthly recently acquired book videos and making sure that I was keeping track of my recently acquired books as well. And then that way I can know how many books I've read off of them, how long it takes me to read those books, what books I'm gravitating towards, what books I'm really liking, what books maybe I could stop acquiring in the future. Question number 6, I kind of already answered, but it is, how do you feel looking at the books you haven't read? Does the amount of books matter? So overall, I don't think the amount of books that you have matter. Some people have incredibly large TBRs that they're never going to get to. I'm looking at you, Simon Savage, as long as it doesn't matter to you. It all depends on how it makes you feel. For some people, that totally stresses them out, and for some people, it doesn't. For them, it's a infinite, endless bookshelf of possibilities. Now, I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I have probably 300 to 500 books in my basement that I don't think about for the majority of the time, and then I probably have now close to 300 books on my TBR shelf that I do think about. So part of it is out of sight, out of mind for sure, and part of it is that these TBR books that are upstairs are really, really books that I want to read, that I like actively want to read. So sometimes I do feel a bit anxious looking at all the books that I want to read and not having time to read all of the books. Personally, if I could just read books all day, I would love that, but that's not really where I'm at in my life right now, so I can only read what I can read. And as I said earlier, I think going through my TBR shelf, really looking at what I acquire each month, really seeing what I read out of the books that I've acquired is helping me pare down my TBR shelf and also helping me figure out what books I should be acquiring, what books I should pass on, what books I gravitate towards reading immediately, what books linger on my shelves, etc., etc. Question number 7 goes right along with that and is, how do you decide what is the right amount of books to have? The right amount of books for me to have are the books that I acquire. There are months like April where I will acquire almost 70 books, over 60 books, and that felt like too much, but there was no point where those books shouldn't have come to me, if that makes sense. Those books were meant to be mine and I acquired them, and that's that. Now, since April, I have been trying to visit less free little libraries. I have been trying to be more selective about the books that I'm taking. I have passed up quite a few books that I want to read because I know that they're available on audio. So I'm trying to be more selective. I think April, although I feel confident in acquiring all those books, also was an eye-opener for how many books I'm actually acquiring, and if I acquired at that rate, how many books I would have to read, and it's a lot. The right amount of books to have is the amount of books that I have. Question number 8 is, do you have a TBR game or process for picking the books that you read? I do not have a TBR game. I am mostly a mood reader, so I mostly read by whim. I do like to do readathons and reading challenges. I do like especially to do monthly reading themes. So in June, I read mostly queer books, but I had such a wide selection of queer books that I could really read by whim within those queer books, and I was able to even find books on audio that just suited my mood and were something that I wanted to read. So that is normally how I choose the books that I read. I like the idea of TBR games, but I don't think I would be okay with like picking the books in that manner. Even books that I think I might read, I end up not reading. Like in June, there were so many queer classics that I wanted to read, and my reading whims just took me in another direction. I will definitely get to those books at some point, but who knows when. Question number 9 is, do you have a book buying problem? If so, what is it, and can it be adjusted? So I definitely don't have a book buying problem because I don't really buy that many books. I do avoid used bookstores a lot of the times because I don't want to buy a lot of books, because I do acquire so many books for free that I don't really need to buy books. So I don't think I have a problem. I do think that I acquire books at a much faster rate than I can possibly read books. And ideally, I think I would like to get to a place where I feel comfortable passing up some books that I want so that I can only acquire as many books in a month as I read in a month. But sometimes that's not always possible. In July, there's a great book sale. There's 2 great book sales that I'm going to. And I just know that I'm going to see and find so many books that I've been wanting to read and that are on my want to read list, and books that I will want to jump into right away that I know I'm going to acquire more than the 10 to 12 books that I read every month. I want to be able to have that freedom, and I like having that freedom of being able to do that without feeling guilty about how many books that I am acquiring or thinking that I have a book acquiring problem. But ideally, most months that there aren't great book sales or months that are normal months, I would like to acquire like less books than I read or the same amount of books that I read. In the beginning of 2022, I started out by acquiring like 15 books but reading 12 books. So that to me felt pretty even, pretty balanced. But now I've gone way beyond that, so it doesn't really feel balanced anymore. Overall, I don't think I have a book acquiring problem. I just really do love books. And since BookTube is something that I want to do and I want to grow, I think more books are good. Prompt number 10 is to tag others, but like I said in the beginning of this video, so many people I know have already done this. So I would say that if you are feeling nervous or feeling anxious about your book buying habits or your book acquiring habits, you should do this tag because it is a good way to reflect on how you acquire books, why you acquire books, what books you acquire, and how you feel about that. So if you are feeling anxious about that, I would say do this tag. If you haven't done this tag already and it seems interesting to you, I would suggest doing this tag. I don't know if I've seen Kevi do this tag. Maybe I would tag Kevi to do this one because she has a really interesting way of acquiring books, I think. She really gets bargains on books and she gets a lot of gifts as well. She also reads a lot of ARCs, so I think that would be an interesting aspect to this question too, and how ARCs have an effect on your book acquiring habits. And I'll tag you if you would like to do this tag. Then there was an 11th prompt. I didn't write it down. I think it was something about that I'm cool for reading books, so thanks. Definitely feel free to do this tag in the comments below. Answer any questions that you'd like to answer there. Let me know what your most recent book that you acquired was. See you in the next one. Bye!